Steam is the most successful VR game with record online play and the highest scores from game critics. The secret of such a great success of such a project was simple: the creators were able to realize the world of the game is absolutely perfect. Many people doubted the success of the project, as everyone believed that it was impossible to create an ideal game world, but despite this, even they enjoyed immersing themselves in the exploration of this ideal world. The main character is one of the players named Mose, whose real name is Kiho, and earlier he was also one of those who did not believe in the success of the scheme, but now he, like everyone else, studies the world of the scheme for days on end. In the scheme, Mose is a slug cleaner, an entry-level player who kills slugs in order to obtain an artifact with a certain probability. Artifacts in the schematic are an extremely valuable resource. They can greatly increase the stats of their bearers, and the value of artifacts with at least one stat point can be worth several million won. The cost of artifacts also depends on the rarity, which is divided into ordinary, magic, and rare, and so far no player has received an artifact whose rarity exceeded magic. But despite at least some chance to get an artifact from slugs, Mose for 2 months could not knock out a single artifact, even of ordinary rarity. After another hunt, Mose headed to Lindirk, one of the seaside cities of the scheme, where he wanted to sell all the slime he had obtained. Mose was surprised that during the day the cost of slime on the market fell by 2 times, because all beginners bring a huge amount of slime, and it is very difficult to find a practical use for it, and Mose manages to sell all his slime for only 20 silver coins. After 2 months of hunting the slug, Mose's final balance was 5 gold coins, which, translated into real money, was approximately 5 million won, which Mose did not have enough for college. In addition, he still has only an iron sword, the durability of which was already running out, and he did not have enough coins to buy a new one. After some deliberation, Mose decides to leave the game and never return to the game again. In the distance, he spots a man running a lottery in public where one player gets a worthless fish with a human face as a reward, and Mose decides to take part in it one last time, hoping he'll get lucky this time. Mose at first, but despite this, he still decides to take part and go home with the purchased stone, since he still has nothing to lose. Already at home, Mose watches how people under the window were trying to get something valuable over and over again, and he was both pleased and saddened by the thought that he would no longer return to the game. Afterwards, Mose decides to open the stone with no expectation of getting something useful. But contrary to his pessimistic thoughts, he receives the first rare item in the scheme, Florin's Star, which had a bunch of various powerful increases to the player's characteristics. Meanwhile, on one of the local channels in the TV program scheme, the host Ji-hyun, who is also the second streamer in Korea, tells how one of the players sold the Ring of Ines with the effect of restoring the health of magical rarity for a record 72 million won. Also recently sold was the Langerus Cavalcade necklace with a 3 strength effect, which was withdrawn from the auction for 39 million. Meanwhile, Mose was shocked by the new artifact and its rarity, because before that the artifacts were exclusively of magical rarity and were very popular and expensive. Mose was beside himself with joy and began to wonder how much such an artifact might cost. If you also consider that this is the first rare artifact in the history of the scheme, then it could be worth billions of won, and then Mose will have enough money not only for college, but also for a nice apartment and an expensive car. Mose was already reaching for the button to sell the artifact on the market, but at the last moment he thought that he wanted to try it out in practice, because even with such low characteristics as Mose, he can stand on a par with the most pumped players of the scheme. As soon as Mose put on the artifact, he was overwhelmed with unimaginable pain from such a sharp level increase, despite the fact that it was just a game. After leveling up, Mose, as a test of his abilities, decided to take a coin from his inventory and bend it with his fingers, and he succeeded without any difficulty. To see the full power of his artifact, Mose decides to travel to the most populous city in the scheme, Asparagon, where he can take on his first quest. Upon arrival in the city, Mose feels somewhat awkward in front of the rest, because there were already pumped players around, while he was dressed in initial equipment, and from all his weapons he had only an almost completely broken sword. When Mose wanted to see what quests were available for him, a girl called him, which made Mose very confused. The girl's name is Sharon, and she is looking for a swordsman for the team to complete the quest, so she invited Mose to join them. He accepted her invitation to the team and she, along with Mose, went to the rest of the team. Sharon and Mose returned to the rest of the team and she introduced a new partner to the team, which caused the team to be somewhat surprised by Sharon's choice, paying attention to Mose's equipment and weapons. Sharon clarified to her teammates that Mose was the strongest player among the rest, despite his outwardly clumsy appearance, seeing his stats with her keen eye ability, allowing her to know the approximate level of other characters' leveling. Meanwhile, one of the players asked all the members of the Silver Guild to gather. Mose was shocked, because it was the famous Silborn, who was the head of the Silver Guild. There is also a rumor about him that he owns 5 magical artifacts. At this time, Silborn tells all the gathered players that they have to hunt trolls, low-level monsters with an aggressive disposition and high recovery abilities. During a trip to the trolls, one of the partners tells Mose about the trolls, that they are very vicious, hardy and move in groups. Another partner says that the main weakness of the trolls is fire and some spells, and that despite their endurance, they are very slow creatures. In addition, Mose was explained that trolls could make good money by selling various loot from them, such as troll blood to create the most powerful potions, or their bones, which make the most durable equipment. Guile, one of the members of the guild, meanwhile talks about how he earns money for college with the help of the game, just like Mose, from which they consider each other comrades in misfortune. At this time, one of the members of the guild gathers all those gathered to explain their further plan of action. The strategy was that some members of the guild lure one troll into one of the preset traps, and as soon as he fell into it, the rest of the members began to beat the troll to death. Mose thought that if the guild had such a well-thought-out plan, then he should refrain from displaying his skills for the time being. Guile looked at the map and noticed that the group of people who went to hunt down the troll were not members of the guild, which could mean that the guild was recruiting new members, and this intelligence group was being tested for entry. Meanwhile, Silborn explains to everyone that the rewards for participating in the hunt are distributed automatically, depending on who gets how many participation points. Meanwhile, in the area of one of the traps, 3 players are looking for a troll, discussing how they will be accepted into the guild after a successful hunt. But before they could react, one large troll had already managed to kill one of them, and a group of countless trolls followed him. Frightened, they ran towards the nearest trap. Almost reaching the trap, one of the players drew his sword in hopes of defeating the enraged trolls, but as soon as he turned around he fell into a puddle of viscous oil, which was highly flammable and immobilized anyone who fell into it, watching as his comrade was killed by one of trolls. Only then did the player realize that there was no trap, and that all this setup was thought out in advance. He pleaded with the participants for help, but instead, Silborn was already preparing his fire spell to set fire to the viscous oil and thereby neutralize several trolls at once. At this time, the team, which included Mose, was moving in a different direction in search of the troll, joking and having fun along the way. However, at that moment, a troll was already waiting for them. Mose spotted something on a nearby hilltop, from which a troll jumped in an instant, preparing to attack the team. But the swordsman of the team managed to react to the blow, substituting his shield and reflecting the blow of the monster. Mose was scared, because this was the first time he had seen a troll so close. He did not know what to do, he was constrained both in soul and body, unable to do anything. All he had to do was wait for the troll to finally swat him like a fly. However, Sharon tried her best to defeat the troll with her bow and arrows, while the swordsman was about to use his shield bash move, which was supposed to push the troll a certain distance and deal heavy damage to it. However, after applying the technique, the troll really flew back, but in flight he managed to grab a tree, stop and uproot the tree, while he did not receive any damage, despite the fact that the swordsman hit the monster with all his strength. The arrows also didn't do any damage to the troll. Mose then offers to lure the monster into a trap, as they originally planned, but Guile drew Mose's attention to the fact that this troll is not easy, since he was alone, because usually trolls gather in small groups, and most likely is a quest monster. Then the swordsman offers to hold back the troll until the guild members arrive in time for them. Time passes, the team restrains the troll in an attempt to inflict at least some damage on the monster, but all to no avail. Mose thinks to himself that these people are enjoying the scheme since they've been playing together for a long time as a well-coordinated team, and that he is clearly out of place compared to them. While he was thinking, the swordsman manages to protect him from another blow, and then he decides his first blow, but unfortunately his only weapon simply breaks, but in less than a second, the troll throws Mose aside, breaking one of the elements of his protective equipment. Next, the troll pounces on Guile, from which Guile was seriously injured. Sharon offers to move away from the monster for safety, but the swordsman again rushed towards the troll, and as soon as he reached the troll, he struck him with a shield in the leg. Meanwhile, Mose was able to recover while his artifact fully restored his stamina. Meanwhile, the swordsman held back the monster while Sharon took a well-aimed shot at the troll's eye. The swordsman had already begun to lose all his strength, waiting for the moment when it would all end. Mose, in an attempt to help his comrades, attacked the troll with all his might, thereby knocking him down and throwing him very far. Mose's artifact activated the effect of restoring the health of his partners, after which the swordsman came to his senses with full health. Then the swordsman realized that this was far from being an ordinary player, as it might seem at first glance. After that, the troll also managed to regain consciousness. Then Sharon prepares to shoot the monster right in the back of the head. The swordsman throws his two-handed steel sword to Mose, with which he runs towards the troll to finally kill him. Meanwhile, Silborn is content with the fact that his inventory is completely full of various resources, because the automatic distribution system of rewards transfers all the resources received to him, since he is the only one who caused damage during the hunt, thereby deceiving the other participants and leaving all the received resources to himself. After that, all participants in the quest receive a message that the quest has been completed and that the Black Mountain Troll has been defeated. Everyone was shocked, especially Silborn, because he remembers for sure that he did not kill such a troll. Silborn even more is that the group with the highest percentage was not his group, and that some swordsmen received the MVP title and a lot of additional awards. Silborn tried to catch the team that Moses was on, but already that night, members of the Dark Guild came after him to put an end to his dishonest methods of play. After defeating the troll, a large core appeared in front of Moses' team, which usually appears after killing monsters. Also, by the size of the core, you can understand how complex this or that monster is. From such cores, you can get various items, such as different materials, armor, weapons, and even artifacts. Sharon offered to open the core to Mozu, because he had the highest percentage of participation in the quest. The rest of the team supported this idea and Mose opened the core of the troll, from which he received a bunch of all sorts of valuable resources. Mose was happy that the days when he was a slug cleaner were finally over and he no longer had to hunt for slugs for hours on end. The next day, Mose decides to auction the magical artifact Argon Force Mountain Ring with a starting price of 80 gold coins, which is roughly 8 million won. He was haunted by thoughts that the price he set was too high, because the cost of artifacts depended on various factors. As a result, Mose still exposes the artifact for 80 gold coins, after which he returns home, but the thought that the price for the artifact was too high did not leave him. Mose lay down on the bed tired, but happy, because today he defeated his first serious opponent, received good loot for this, and made new friends. After that, Mose turns off the game and he finds himself back in his small apartment. He pulls out his phone, which had several notifications, among which were several debits, a message from his mother, and a wallet replenishment from his mother. A few seconds later, Mose receives a message stating that his ring was auctioned for 300 million won. The next day, Mose took a sabbatical from college and went to the scheme dealership, where he bought scheme powder, a special dietary supplement that fed players through the helmet when they ate in the game. This allowed players to get all the nutrients they needed without leaving the scheme. On the way home, Mose reads a newsfeed that talks about the murder of Silborn by members of the Dark Guild, how Mose became one of the strongest players after killing the Black Mountain Troll, and how the Arthur Trinity Guild is looking for him. Mose was shocked by the news of Silborn's death and by the fact that other players were actively looking for him, as he did not understand why they needed him to join the guild or to fight him. Mose immediately went home to enter the game and leave Asparagan as soon as possible, because if nothing is done, then his future in the game will be in jeopardy. As soon as Mose was in the game, he decided to continue his journey alone, after which he went to the Forge of Asparagan, where he was made equipment from the skin of a Black Mountain Troll, which gave a bunch of different power-ups and effects. After the forge, Mose set off, and after a few hours he was near the entrance to the cave, which was closed. Mose began to look for a way to get into this cave, but all his searches were unsuccessful, and he already began to think that he was lost. Noticing a slab on the ground, from which a strong wind was blowing, Mose presses on it, after which the entrance to the cave opens, thus Mose became the first player who was able to open this cave. After entering the cave, Mose took out a Belsec stone from his inventory, which shone with a bright light for 30 minutes. Having reached the end of the cave, Mo saw a large stone slab there, on which it was written about how an army of warriors was imprisoned in this cave, which was ambushed and became the victim of a strong curse. As soon as Mose read everything from the stone slab, a countless army of skeletons rose up behind him, ready to attack Mose. Despite countless opponents, Mose's non-combat class, and his meager weapon skills, he easily held his own against the skeleton army. The skeletons decided to attack Mose in a mob and knock him down in order to finally finish him off, but even under such circumstances, he was able to fight off the remaining skeletons and end the battle in his favor. After the battle, Mose's level rose by 2 points, which he was incredibly happy about. A moment later, Mose heard a heart-rending scream from one end of the cave. He headed towards the source of the sound, and after a few steps, he smelled the nasty smell of corpses lying nearby, which did not stop him, and he continued to go deeper into the depths. When he reached the end of the cave, he saw another slab, which said that a long time ago, Imperial soldiers who disobeyed the orders of the emperor attacked one of the villages, killed all the inhabitants, robbed its supplies and burned everything that was left of it. Then the shaman of this village, Marudal, cast his curse on the soldiers, causing them to suffer even after death. After reading it, a message appeared in front of Mose about the beginning of the quest to kill Jiritan, the leader of the deserters, which will begin after pronouncing the words of the curse indicated on the stove. Mose uttered the words of a curse and bones appeared in the middle of the cave, forming a large skeleton of the leader of the deserting soldiers in battle armor. Mose was terrified at such a sight, he was shaking all over with fear, but despite this he was ready for a new battle. Gathering all his will into a fist, Mose shouted to his opponent that he would pay for his crime again. The enemy attacked Mose in rage, causing him to fly off into the cave wall, lowering his health to critical levels. After such a powerful blow, Mose's health almost immediately recovered to the maximum. Jiritan was shocked by Mose's resilience, preparing to damage Mose one more time in hopes of incapacitating him. However, Mose is able to react to Jiratan's attack and return from it, while managing to deal damage to Jiritan in retaliation. Mose was already hoping to deliver the final blow to Jiritan, but he manages to rise to his feet and remove the restraining seal from himself, after which Jiritan's level increased even more, which made it difficult to fight him. After leveling up, Jiritan charged at Mose with lightning speed and threw him into the side of one of the walls of the cave, inflicting even more severe injuries on him. Despite such serious injuries, Mose finds the strength to get back on his feet and restore his health bar in a matter of seconds. Jiritan was beside himself with anger when Mose was able to survive even after such a powerful attack. This time Mose was able to repel Jiritan's attack, after which he immediately rushed to the attack, managing to deliver several serious blows to Jiritan's arm. Jiritan tried to strike back at Mose, but when he swung his sword, Mose managed to cut off his hand, which made Jiritan unable to attack Mose. Jiritan was confused by how an ordinary newcomer, unaware of what it means to be a real warrior, could defeat him, a knight of the great imperial army. Mose reproached him for not being a knight, but only a cowardly murderer who discredited the empire and his reputation by attacking the civilian population. Jiritan tried to explain that during the war his empire stopped supplying the army with supplies, and then they had to take supplies from the village they were defending in order not to starve to death, to which the inhabitants attacked them in response. In response, Mose refuted Jiritan's words that he does not know what it means to be a warrior, because before that Mose served 2 years in the Korean troops, uttering the soldier's oath, after which he cut off Jiritan's head, thereby completing the quest. After the battle, Mose's level increased by another 6 points and at the same time received an achievement that increased all of his characteristics by another 2 points. Also, in place of Jiritan, a red sparkling core appeared, after the opening of which a bunch of various extremely useful resources appeared in front of Mose. While Mose was collecting items, he noticed the Giratina weapon that was left over from the battle. He looked at the stats of the weapon, which had a lot of useful stats and had a unique rarity level. Mose was extremely surprised by the rarity of the weapon, as its rarity, apparently, was even higher than the rarity of his artifact. He also concluded that if this sword belongs to unique items, then there is simply no higher rarity in the scheme. In addition, Mose was very pleased with the fact that he was now not only the first player in the scheme to receive a rare item, but also the first to receive a unique item. When Mose tried to put the sword in his inventory, the sword turned into a ball of energy that headed towards Mose. After that, the skill of summoning an engraved sword became available to him, which allowed him to summon and remove the sword when pronouncing his name. Mose decides to put his first skill to the test. He said the name of the sword, after which a magical seal appeared in front of him, from which the sword itself appeared. While Mose was inspecting his new sword, under his feet he noticed the ring of Jirathan, a quest item that was needed for the hidden quest to appear. Mose continued to collect items from Giratina, hoping to auction them off for a handsome sum. Meanwhile, it's already daylight outside, and Mose is about to go to the nearest village to start bidding at the auction. Mose ended up in the city of Toiko, where he began bidding at the auction, indicating the initial cost of 800 gold coins. All auction participants were shocked by what things appeared there, among which were rare items that no one had seen at the auction before. As a result, Mose was able to gain 8,726 gold coins from the auction. He was stunned by such numbers, because before that he could not even imagine that he could earn such a large amount in such a short period of time. Among the gold coins, Mose also noticed strange coins. It turns out these coins are Ormacon tokens of magical rarity, made from Orma ore, which depicts Ormacon himself, a dragon with golden scales, and one such token is equal to 1,000 gold coins in value. Now Mose must be extremely careful, because now everyone wants to know who is Mose. Especially he should beware of the members of the Dark Guild, who rob everyone, from upgraded and wealthy players to NPCs. Mose began to hide from passers-by on the street for fear of being declassified. While on the street they actively discussed how much he earned at the auction. Then Mose decides to purchase a new set of equipment so that she hides his face and at the same time has a large margin of safety. The next day, Mose went to one of Toiko's blacksmiths to get a new set of equipment. The blacksmith shows him the best set of armor he has ever made. Mose thought that in this armor, hardly anyone would recognize him. Then Mose decides to buy this particular armor. The blacksmith quotes his price as 200 gold coins, thinking that Mose will not be able to pull the price. Mose, without any hesitation, gives the blacksmith the money and takes the whole set. On the night of this day, Kiho, one of the players of the scheme, walks through dark alleys, bumping into her partner Veron, who offers her his help. Kiho refuses the offer of help, fearing that Veron will only interfere with the task. Veron, on the other hand, calls Kiho a rootless mongrel, to which she was already in the blink of an eye standing with a sword in her hand near her partner. Veron dissuades his partner from killing. She warns her partner that next time there will be no mercy on him. Kiho, taking a stone in his hands and throwing it to the ground, opens a portal to Astana and passes into it, after which the portal disappears. At this time, Veron is trying to figure out where the Florent star, which they have been hunting for so long, is located, and which is currently in Mose. The next day, Mose went to Silver Valley with an uncle he had saved from a monster attack. Mose told Uncle how he earns his college education by playing scheme and earning money there. Uncle, in turn, told how he was fired from the company, after which he decided to open his own small chain of chicken restaurants, but his business went bankrupt very quickly. Then he heard from acquaintances about the scheme, where he decided to work as a delivery man to earn his living. Upon arrival in the city, Mose and his uncle arrange a meeting near the fountain after all their business. First of all, Mose decides to give his armor to the local blacksmith for repair, as the strength of his armor was running out. Mose's armor, he was trying to figure out under what condition the hidden quest with Jiratan's ring would appear. After repairing the armor, he left the forge, from where he saw some guy beating his uncle, yelling at his uncle that he was late with the delivery. The people on the street were unable to do anything, and they could only look at the torment of their uncle, since this boy was the heir of the Valley clan. Then Mose decides to take matters into his own hands. He took the guy by the hand and explained to him that along the way, Uncle had some unforeseen circumstances. The guy was only more angered by Mose's act, from which he was already ready to beat Mose. However, Mose dodges the blow and hits the guy in the face so hard that he flies into the nearest house and simply passes out. Morik appeared, the father of the guy who was in charge in the Silver Valley, with his guards. After that, he ordered his knight to attack Mose. He attacked Mose, but Mose managed to get his engraved sword and repel the attack, from which he flew off towards the guy and also lost consciousness. Mose immediately decided to deal with Morik, while the people praised Mose, mistaking him for a knight from the Order of the 14 Knights. As it turned out later, Morik took half of all their income and food from the inhabitants as a tax and killed those who could not pay him. Morik, as an excuse, claimed that he was preparing supplies in case of famine. After threats from Mose, Morik began to beg for mercy and let him go. Mose decides to let Morik live for confessing his crime, on the condition that he pay the residents for all damages. Mose's fame level rose due to rumors, completing a secret quest to overthrow the tyranny of the Valley clan, also getting a hint to obtain a rare artifact and increasing fame level. As a clue, Mose needed to head to one of the cities on the edge of the continent, Falop. Meanwhile, Mose was followed by two unknown players in white robes. The first player offered to punish Mose for what he had done, to which the second decided to remind the first of a certain prophecy in which a wanderer from the distant would make this world a better place. One of them suggested that this wanderer is the same Mose, which all the players of the scheme are now talking about. Unknown players in robes decide to follow this wanderer. Meanwhile, Mose is about to go to Falop for a hidden quest. Upon arrival in Falop, Mose over the course of several days to find out some information about the players of the secret class, who have various hidden knowledge and abilities, and there are very few such players in the scheme. But all attempts by Mose to find out something about the players of the secret class were unsuccessful. While Mose was looking at the quest board, he thought that he would have to search for the players of the secret class on his own. Suddenly a man with a bag of money ran past him. A few seconds later, this man flew into the wall of one of the Phelan buildings. A stranger approached the man, from whom the man stole the money. Out of desperation, he decided to kill the stranger, but the stranger killed the thief in the same second. Mose noticed on the stranger's finger exactly the same Gerathan ring as his own. A little later, Mose received a clue to the secret class reward, and then he needed to talk to this man. Mose figured that this stranger might be a secret class swordsman, and then he decides to follow the stranger and try to enter into a dialogue with him. Mose followed the stranger until the very night, and at one point he simply lost sight of him. At that moment, the stranger was behind Mose, and he grabbed Mose and took him to one of the alleys. The stranger was about to finish off Mose for spying on him, but at one point he noticed the necklace around Mose's neck, and he began to ask Mose where he got this artifact from. Mose replied to the stranger that he had won it in the lottery. The stranger, believing this to be an unfortunate joke, inflicted damage on Mose, who almost killed him. Mose began to tell the stranger how in Linder he had won him in the lottery from an old man. The stranger tried to ask Mose what the old man looked like. Mose said the old man had gray hair, a beard, and a robe. The stranger released Mose and told him that this old man is none other than Gambler Lario, one of the most high-class criminals. The stranger told Mose how he was assigned to track down the criminal, because this old man knew about the loss of the Langerus cavalcade. The stranger also said that earlier the cavalcade was considered the strongest group of warriors on the continent, but on the way to the war, all its members disappeared, and during the search, only abandoned ruins were in their place. And Mose's pendant used to belong to the cavalcade commander, Florin. Then Mose realized that this was not just a rare artifact, but the real treasure of the scheme. The stranger was convinced that the necklace was real, paying attention to how quickly Mose's wounds healed after the blow. After that, the stranger rushed to attack Mose in order to take the artifact for himself. Mose guessed that the stranger planned to attack Mose from the very beginning, since he so easily told him about his goal. Mose decides to attack the stranger in return, but as soon as he calls his sword, the stranger manages to land several more heavy blows on him. Almost immediately, all of Mose's wounds were healed, which greatly surprised the enemy, and then he assumes that Mose is simply immortal. The enemy then plans to hit Mose until he loses all of his health. After a few blows, Mose fell to the ground, having lost all his strength and waiting for the last blow. But at the last moment, a swordsman appears who attacked the stranger, calling him a traitor for giving away all the details of their mission. The stranger begged the swordsman for mercy, but the swordsman killed the stranger in an instant. After that, the swordsman approached Mose in order to finish him off, as he now knows all the details of their mission. Mose was horrified, because this swordsman was even more creepy and frightening than that stranger. Mose got to his feet, ready for battle, which only amazed the swordsman, because despite the zero chances of winning, Mose was not going to give up and was determined to fight. As Mose got to his feet, the swordsman noticed on Mose's finger a Jirathan ring bearing the swordsman's seal. The swordsman grabbed Mose by the neck to find out where he got this ring from. Mose told the swordsman how he got the ring after fighting Jirathan. The swordsman let Mose go, knowing he wasn't lying about the ring. Then the swordsman tells how hundreds of years ago Jirathan went over to the side of the empire, thereby betraying the swordsman. There were very few swordsmen then, and therefore they could not resist the imperial army. Mose apologized to the swordsman for Jirathan's death, but the swordsman said that sooner or later someone would have killed him anyway. After that, the swordsman offers Mose two options: either he joins the ranks of the swordsman, or he is killed on the spot. Mose, interrupting the speech of the swordsman, chose the option to join the ranks of the sword warriors. The swordsman was somewhat surprised by Moses' decision to become a swordsman so quickly. After that, the swordsman delivers a strong blow to Moses' face, saying that this is such a traditional greeting of swordsmen. After such a powerful blow, Mose is in the sanctuary. The sanctuary is a haven for the swordsmen, a group of mercenaries who fulfill various orders in the scheme internationally and who swear allegiance to Adias, the goddess of blades. The swordsman who sent Mose to the shrine is named Robin and is one of the 10 masters. The next day, Mose receives a call from his mother during strength training, worried that he sent her 4 million won, suspecting that Mose earned this amount illegally. Mose, on the other hand, refutes his mother's suspicions and says that this is just a kind of gift for which he saved up for a long time and diligently. After that, Mose enters the scheme in order to be in time for the swordsman's training. During training, Mose managed to regret several times that he became a swordsman, because the training was very difficult and exhausting. Since many of the missions had a national character, the training was not only physical, but also theoretical, where the swordsman studied the history, culture and traditions of other nationalities. The only thing that made Mose train further and all these trainings was Kiho, who also ended up in the ranks of the swordsman. With her, Mose was at every workout for weeks. Moses' first mission, in which he needs to find a source of supernatural activity in the northeast of Asparagan. Mose was very nervous, but Kiho encouraged him in every possible way, which at least calmed him a little. Once in Asparagan, Mose noticed how everything changed in a couple of months. New players no longer hunt slugs, prices for troll skins have risen sharply, how the average level of artifacts has increased and how many new players with various artifacts have become. While Mose was walking the streets of Asparagan thoughtfully, he noticed one player without equipment in the crowd asking for help, saying that a certain guild number 1 took away all his equipment in Walinko hunting forests, and that they are now demanding a ransom from him for all his items. Mose and the robbed player traveled to the Walinko hunting woods, where they saw guild members rob passers-by. Mose tried to politely explain to the members of the guild that this area is common property, and that they cannot dispose of it like that. The guild responded by being rude to Mose and insulting him in every possible way in an attempt to get him out of there. Mose made it clear to the guild members that he would not leave so easily. Then one of the members of the guild decides to attack Mose, but in the same second he was able to neutralize the enemy with one blow. Mose all at once, but despite such an advantage in numbers, Mose, even without any weapons, was able to repel the attacks of all the guild members. The remaining members of the guild were at a loss and did not know what to do now. Meanwhile, Saksa appeared, a thug and guild leader who had a bronze token, which is given to players who are ranked in the top 9,000 players of the scheme. During Moses' training in the scheme, the rating system was updated, where now players occupying positions from 9000 to 6001 are given a bronze token, and players from positions 6000 to 3001 are given a silver token, but the strongest players occupying positions from 3000 to first, a gold token is issued. He began to threaten Mose with brutal reprisals if he did not leave the grounds of the Walinko hunting woods. Mose was able to knock out Socks with one blow, after which the rest of the guild members came running, whom Mose was able to kill with his sword in a few moments and return all the things to the robbed passers-by. A few minutes later, Mose was already on board the airship, which was leaving for Asparagan. There he met one of the swordsmen named Kalor. Mose felt a strong aura around him, and after using one of his ability to see the player's level, he saw that Kalor was level 91. After greeting Mose with Kalor, they went to one of the special halls of the airship, in which, according to Kalor, as many as 5 important people gathered, which could mean that something extremely serious happened in the north. As soon as Mose and Calloway were in the hall, some of the strongest people in the scheme were there. Among them were Aurora level 201 mercenary, Yvonne 5th generation merchant level 217, 2 members of the Order of the 14 Knights level 155 seer and level 186 care, and Gon level 244 Tikri's swordmaster. Swordsmen are divided into 3 categories: swordsman, master and grandmaster. Those swordsmen who were able to undergo training in the sanctuary and received the seal became the grandmaster. Mose and Calloway introduced themselves to Gon. Gon, in response, was pleasantly surprised that they did not get cold feet in front of the grandmaster, which gave him hope for a brighter future. After that, Mose received a secret achievement, which required him to face one of the ghostly blades, which increased his strength by 2 points. He was surprised to get a secret achievement for such a relatively simple action. Thereafter, McGroffin, the airship's captain, informed the passengers of their imminent arrival at the snow wall in the north of Langnes. After the appeal, Gon invited everyone in the hall to discuss further actions in Langer. After everyone left, Mose noticed that the difficulty level of his mission had gone from S rank to SS rank. Upon arriving at the Snow Mountain Fortress in Langnes, the rest of the team also noticed the increased difficulty of the mission. Gon was afraid the mission would have to be cancelled. In an attempt to find out the reason for the increase in the difficulty of the task, Care learned that the cause of supernatural activity was red lightning in several areas of the continent, which were summoned by Garnos. Garnas is a catastrophe class 17 danger dragon from an unknown continent. As a reward for completing the quest, Care promised everyone 50 Ormacons. He also offered Yvonne the opportunity to trade in Asparagan. When Hare asked Gon what award he wanted to receive, he made it clear that he was not interested in the award, and he invited Mose and Calloway to be on the same team with him, after which they received an invitation from Gon to the team. After that, everyone went to one of the local hotels, where Sire was already waiting for them, a member of the Caravan of Truth, who would also be on a mission with the others. Mose assumed that Sire was also a member of the Order of the 14 Soldiers, given his level 117 and how quickly he got to the meeting point. After everyone gathered, a discussion of further tactics began. Aurora will take all the damage and Gon will be in the back with Mose and Calloway. Care has joined Gon's team. Yvonne will hold back the enemy, while Seer will provide magical support to everyone. After discussing further strategy, Sire began using a spell that would transport everyone to Garnas without drawing attention. Once everyone was at Garnas' supposed location, red lightning struck behind Mose, once again showing Garnas' colossal strength. When everyone was grouped, Sire used a spell to clear the storm for a better view. After that, Sir also began to prepare a special spell that strengthened the team's characteristics. When all the spells were cast, a loud roar was heard in the distance, after which the entire group prepared for battle. A few seconds later, Garnas appeared right behind Mose. As Garnas landed, he snarled so hard that he knocked Mose off his feet. After that, Garnas spewed out a large flame that was supposed to burn Mose to the ground. But at this moment, Aurora managed to substitute his shield in front of the dragon and beat off the powerful flame. Then Yvonne threw a cable towards the enemy and thereby cover his mouth. After that, Gon and Care dealt a heavy blow to Garnas, thereby slightly stunning the enemy and buying him some time to weaken him. However, after that, the enemy was able to come to his senses and take another fiery breath. Aurora attempted to deflect Garnas' attack again, using a shield special ability that summoned a massive stream of light that stopped the incoming fire. Meanwhile, Seer and Sire prepared to use a special skill that weakened all of the enemy's stats for the duration of the fight. After such a weakening, Aurora directed the shield beam directly into the dragon's mouth, thereby briefly stunning him. As he parried the fire, Mose noticed that his level had skyrocketed to level 354, and he remembered how Jirathan could also level up with special weapons. Garnas was about to attack the group from the air, but Yvonne manages to catch his wings with her hook, thus increasing her level to 311. Care decides to seize the moment and attack the enemy in the air. Mose was very surprised by Hire's ability to fly. At this point, Calloway and Mose also decide to attack Garnas, but a second before their attack, the enemy manages to blow them away with their breath. Then Gon appears, ready to land another blow on the enemy, and he swung so hard that he was able to summon a powerful air current, which was able to deliver an extremely powerful blow, which was able to knock the enemy down. Gon and his teammates decide to take the opportunity to inflict several severe wounds on Garna's. As they charged towards the enemy, Gon was able to see Mo's hidden potential. However, when trying to strike, Mo's sword bounced off such a strong and durable scale, thereby causing no damage to the enemy. Then Gon again delivered his deafening swing, from which Garna's lost consciousness. After that, Care prepared to use his final spell, which was supposed to finally finish off the enemy. Meanwhile, the remaining members of the group hid behind Aurora's shield in order to avoid being hit by the spell. After using the spell, Garna's was completely defeated and a loot core appeared next to his corpse, but since all the party members were NPCs, no one except Mo's saw the core. Also after the fight, the level of Mo's up 25 points. At that moment, the members of the group were already going about their business. Aurora immediately left the place of the battle. Yvonne and her people cut up the remains of the dragon, so that they could later be sold on the market. Hare was thanking Gon, Mo's, and Calloway for their help with the quest during this time, never ceasing to be amazed at their team's combat and command skills. With Care gone, Gon turned to Mo's and Calloway, praising their deeds during the fight, hoping that he would hear of their exploits in the future, after which he traveled through the portal to Bin Caravan. As Calloway left the battlefield, Mo's remembered the core of Garna's, which he had not yet discovered. When the core was opened, a reward appeared in front of Mo's in the form of a set of the legendary Atori's Rising Sun armor with the legendary Atori's sword, which could give a lot of increases to the player's characteristics and skills. Mo's was amazed at the reward, as he is now the first Scheme player to receive legendary items. Later on Scheme TV, Ji-hyun revealed that the Scheme will soon host a ranker battle to settle the positions of the players in the rankings, in which everyone can participate without exception. Meanwhile, Mo's went out for a morning jog to improve his stamina and be in the Scheme with less health risks. While jogging, Mo's wondered if he could live a normal life like everyone around him if he didn't spend so much time playing games, and if he could regard the Scheme as mere entertainment. After jogging, Mo's returned home and entered the Scheme, where he gave his armor to the blacksmith. After that, he decides to go into one of the alleys to get his sword and inspect it. After taking the sword in his hands, Mo's felt an unpleasant sensation in his hands, but after a few seconds the pain disappeared, and he received the passive skill Atori Fighting Style, which, after killing 100 monsters, activated the skill Destructive Flames, Solar Storm. After activating the passive skill, Mo saw one of the players talking through a crystal ball, a special artifact that allowed players to communicate with each other from a distance. After that, Mose went to one of the local trading shops, where he bought a crystal ball, and later he took his set of armor from the blacksmith. Then Mose went to the port, from where he was going to go by airship to the sanctuary of Asparagan. When Mose was on board the airship, he saw Kiho there, who was also going to Asparagan on a joint mission with Mose. Upon arrival in Asparagan, Mose and Kiho headed towards Bin Caravan, a place of common trade. Outside the tower, Russell, a member of the Information Guild that collects news reports for Scheme TV, was waiting for them. After taking the elevator up to the 88th floor, Mose, Kay and Russell arrived at one of the guest rooms of the Bin Caravan, where Russell explained the details of their mission. Eulacinia's Rhapsody was spotted in Bin Caravan, which ended up there illegally and should not fall into the wrong hands. From minute to minute, an auction will be held on the floor above, at which artifacts will be exhibited. But since no one can pick up the exhibited items at the auction before it starts, Mose and Kay will have to buy back these artifacts during the auction. Kiho played the role of the aristocratic Ariane Marie, while Mose played the role of Maxim's bodyguard knight. Once at the auction site, all eyes were on the image of Kay, while Mose followed her under the guise of a bodyguard in his armor. Upon arrival, they were greeted by Akasset von Rame, one of the auction guests, who invited Kut to their table. Kiho accepted the invitation and they walked towards the table while the rest of the guests quietly taunted Kiho and Mose. Reaching the table, Rame introduced Akasset to the rest of the family. Kuazari, pretending to accidentally misspelled her last name, which greatly amused the members of the Akasset family. Rama made excuses, she wanted to use the Parath dialect as a show of respect. Later, she tried to move on to the subject of the Mari family's possessions. Kiho said that her family owns a lot of vineyards, which surprised Rama and her family a bit that they were able to get the title through farming. Then Rame, in an attempt to humiliate Kay in front of everyone, told her that her family had a very rich history and that her ancestors were strong sorcerers who served in the royal court. She also did not hesitate to belittle the Aryan family, pointing out the presence of elves in her family. They also pointed out that the necklace around Kay's neck was worn backwards. Then Rame asked her bodyguard Orf to fix Kay's jewelry. As soon as Orf approached Kay, Mose grabbed his hand, stopped him and began to threaten him with terrible reprisals if he came even closer to Kay. All the guests were shocked by what they saw. Kiho pointed out the bad manners and incompetence of the knights of the Akazit family. These words hurt and angered the members of the Akazit family very much. Then Kiho spoke out that she was a victim of insults from the Akazit family, calling them arrogant fools. After that, Kiho challenged Orf to a duel with Mose in order to defend her honor. Orf accepted the challenge and was ready to fight, and then he and Mose drew swords and entered into battle, during which Mose defeated Orf with one blow. The guests were surprised by this spectacle, which only angered Rama more. Then she called Lanshel, another knight of the Akazit family, to fight Mose. Despite Lanshel's numerous attacks, Mose did not receive any significant injuries, which greatly frightened Lanshel, thinking that Mose was a monster. Then Mose defeated Lanshel with one blow. After the battle between the knights, Kiho came out in front of everyone, saying that she was disappointed that everyone began to mock and humiliate the guest from a distant land based on stereotypes, hoping that the next such events would be warmer to guests from afar. After Kay's speech, the guests applauded her and Mose for their honesty. After the reception, Kiho and Mose went to one of the rooms. Mose was surprised at how Kiho got into the role. Kiho told Mose that before she became a swordsman, she was a slave in the house of one of the aristocrats whose behavior and thinking ingrained in Ko, which helped to reveal her role as an aristocrat so believably. After that, Mose and Kiho went to the auction with 25 warmigans and another 7,000 gold coins. It is also revealed that someone else is going to get Eulacinia's Rhapsody, and so Mose and Kiho decide to get rid of them during the auction. As Mose and Kiho entered the Bin Caravan auction room, a man on the stage greeted all the assembled guests and announced the start of bidding. The first lot was a fingernail from the princess of the ruined kingdom of Esrandil. Mose noted that this item gives the owner access to a quest related to the tragic history of the Esrandil family. The man on the stage started the auction with 3 ormicons, and after a few seconds of bidding, the nail was sold for 17 ormicons. The next lot was Eulacinia's Rhapsody, which was exactly what Mose and Kay needed. Mose noticed that the item's window was black. Bidding started with 4 ormicons, and after a few bids, Kiho offers 25 ormicons. The man on the stage was amazed by this figure, and was ready to end the auction on this figure. But suddenly someone from the audience offered a price of 50 ormicons, which is very strong for all those present. Mose was about to go looking for the man, but Kiho offered at the last moment a price of 75 ormicons. Mose was surprised how Kiho could offer such a sum, but Kiho explained that she was waiting for the reaction of someone trying to ransom the artifact so that he could be tracked down more easily. Meanwhile, a guest in the audience offered 100 ormicons, making the Eulacinian Rhapsody the most expensive artifact in the history of Eden. Mose noticed the one who offered such a price, and this person turned out to be the same gambler Laro, whom Mose once won in the lottery. Mose and Kiho set off in pursuit of Laro. When they did catch up with Laro, a mysterious dark aura appeared around him, which increased Laro's level to 102. Mose covered Kiho with him, because she was an NPC, and she could not see Laro's level and understand how dangerous he was for her. When Laro approached Mose, Mose told Kiho how he once won a powerful artifact from him in the lottery in Lindirk. Mose was surprised that Laro remembered him. Instantly being at Moses, Laro told him that their meeting was destined by fate. Kiho tried to rush to attack Laro, but he manages to dodge Kiho's attack in a second, moving towards Mose and moving with him to an unknown place where he wanted to talk to Mose. Laro said that all the players who participated in his lottery instantly sold the artifacts they won without even trying them out. Everyone except Mose. And then Laro began to remind Mose about his battle with Jiritan, about how a stranger in Falup almost killed him, thereby pushing Mose that it was not all accidental. Afterwards, Laro tells Mose his plan of how he is going to conquer the world with the help of the other Skeen players. Laro offers to join him and help him get rid of those who killed Laro's people and rule the world of the Skeen with him. Mose thought that Laro became the one who hated the whole world and the one who wants revenge for the fact that this world has taken away the most precious thing from him. Mose said that he is grateful to Laro for giving him the opportunity to become so strong, but despite this, he refused Laro's offer and decides to fight him and defeat him. Then Mose tries to strike at Laro, but he easily dodged the blow, after which a strange energy began to flow from Laro, which, as Laro himself said, was his strength. Laro then gives Mose one last chance to join him. Mose states that he has no intention of joining him, saying that he doesn't need to. After that, Mose and Laro enter into a fierce battle against each other, in which Mose tried to cause at least some damage to the enemy. Laro tried to convince Mose with the facts that Mose originally planned to only have fun in this world in every possible way, which Laro gave him with the help of an artifact that Mose received in the lottery. Mose confirmed his words that he came to the world of the scheme only for the purpose of earning money, and that thanks to him he gained such a power that greatly helped him in exploring this world. He told about how he visited such places as Asparagon, Langer and other places, and how he was surprised by these places every time. He never ceased to remind Laro how much he is grateful to him, and that he, like no one else, understands what he is now. But he simply could not fulfill Laro's desire and destroy this world, while thinking that Laro himself, deep down, did not want to destroy this world. And so Mose invites Laro to carry this heavy emotional burden instead of him. After these words, Laro began to only laugh sarcastically at the words of Mose, after which he decides to defeat Mose. Laro pounced on Mose and began to attack him, gradually reducing his health level, while Mose tried to fight him off in every possible way. At that moment, Mose activated the Solar Storm skill on his sword, hoping that this skill would be able to defeat Laro. As soon as Mose used the skill, Laro's body began to rapidly burn to ashes. As Laro burned, he remembered how a group of Imperial soldiers killed all of his family members by hanging. After Laro found a suitable weapon, he immediately set about his revenge and killed one of these Imperial soldiers right in front of the little boy who was the son of the slain soldier. Laro thought that even then he realized that revenge would not make him feel better, but only the opposite, while he would only harm not only himself, but also those around him. Despite the fact that Laro could no longer fix it in any way, he understood that somewhere deep down he regretted what he had done, and he finally understood this thanks to Mose, after which his body completely shattered into dust. After the end of the fight, Mose returned to the place where Kiho was, also receiving a new hidden trait Lucky Destroyer, which gave him two skills. One allows him to store and receive received spheres, and the other allows him to store and combine received spheres. Mose thought that Laro purposely left his skills to Mose as a legacy. After the fight with him, Mose reflected on the fact that those that the players consider to be NPCs have the same human emotions, such as anger and sympathy, and that they are very different from those artificial dummies who simply follow the program. Kiho approached him to find out how he was going to spend his vacation after the previous assignment. Kiho plans to go home to her relatives in one of the villages in Ajarusa during her vacation. Saying goodbye to K, Mose went to Asparagan, thinking about how he could spend his vacation. At this time, Sharon contacted Mose via a crystal ball, with whom Mose, in a team with Guile and a swordsman, were on a quest to kill the troll boss. Sharon arranges to meet with Mose in one of the taverns to discuss what's new they have happened during this time. In the tavern, all members of the team decided to find out how Mose managed to become a local celebrity in such a time. Mose told his comrades that he simply took orders and fulfilled them, and thus gained his popularity. After Mose's story, Guile decides to tell the guys that he got paired magic rings with his girlfriend. Everyone congratulated Guile on the appearance of the girl, but once Mose found out that his girlfriend was an elf, he was very surprised that Guile was dating an NPC, especially considering that NPCs can also experience human emotions. After that, he began to thank Mose for the fact that then he was able to defeat the boss, because after that Guile was able to pay for his college studies. But Mose began to thank Guile for his efforts in the field of pain, because if he had not been there, they would not have been able to save their uncle, and then they would not have got out of that ambush. Sharon said that if it wasn't for Mose, they would have been Silborn's next victim. Uncle also added that it was because of such dishonest players like Silborn that people abandoned the game and the scheme. Then Mose realized that Laro, by giving the artifact to Mose, was able to effect improvements not only in Mose's life, but also the lives of other people. Then Sharon told the guys that after that task, she finally quit her previous job, and now she also earns money in the scheme. After that, she decides to show her comrades her new rare bow, with which she now fights much more effectively. Mose appreciated Sharon's new acquisition, because he understands better than anyone how difficult it is to get a rare artifact on your own in the scheme. Mose also thought about the fact that after receiving the Florin Star, he was constantly lucky in everything, which greatly facilitated his game, while earlier he was struggling to get at least some handout from the game, as he played exclusively in his own game. Pleasure. After that, he invites the guys to go on some kind of quest. Mose and the team decide to go on a quest to exterminate a colony of monitor lizards in one of the largest mines on the continent. Guile told Mose that monitor lizards are monsters belonging to the genus of cave monsters, which usually live in packs of up to 100 individuals. Uncle suggested that if they needed to kill a whole colony of such monsters, then there should be many times more of them. Sharon guessed that they would have to kill over 500 monsters, which greatly frightened Guile. Mose said that such a colony should have at least one leader, and if they can defeat him, then the rest of the monsters will not pose much of a threat. Uncle thought that the leader of a colony of monitor lizards usually does not enter into battle, but only sits in the rear and watches the battle. After that, the team began to discuss the action plan. Sharon will hunt down traces of the colony while Guile will provide magical support and assistance to Mose, while Uncle will protect Mose and take all the damage. Mose himself was surprised at how everyone focuses their tactics on helping him. Guile and Sharon explained to Mose that it was with this strategy that they would have the best chance of winning. Mose, after thinking a little about the thoughts of his comrades, agreed with this decision and they all went together to complete the quest. Once in the mine, the team began to look for monitor lizards. A few minutes later, they heard strange sounds from the depths of the cave, and everyone prepared for battle, but in place of the sounds there was only a deep cliff and not a single monster. Out of the darkness, Guile was suddenly attacked by one of the monitor lizards, but Mose manages to protect him from the monster. Suddenly, an uncountable number of monsters began to appear from the darkness, which were already ready to attack the team. Everyone was surprised that they would have to exterminate 1,500 monsters along with the leader. Everyone got into their fighting positions and began to fight off the hordes of opponents, but there were only more of them, and it was getting harder for the team to fight off the monsters. Once on the edge of the cliff, Mose noticed that Sharon was surrounded by enemies, but suddenly she runs through the crowd of monsters and is again next to her partners. Mose thought that it would take them a very long time to kill monitor lizards, and that with such tactics they would hardly be able to defeat such a colony. Then Mose thinks that if you try to break through the enemies directly towards the leader, he will die very quickly. Then he decides to use the sword skill Solar Storm to defeat the monsters surrounding them at once, while his uncle protects the rest of the team. After several monitor lizards pounced on Mose, he activates the skill, and by doing so, he overcomes more than 400 monsters in one skill. As they continued to exterminate the lizards, the members of Mose's team never ceased to be amazed at how easily and effectively he gets rid of the monsters. After Mose destroyed about half of all monitor lizards, the team continued their advance through the monitor lizards towards the leader. Having exterminated most of the lizards, the team noticed in the distance the alleged leader, who was not a monitor lizard, but an emaciated and creepy person. The man walked out of the monitor lizards and said that he was a fallen man who did not differ much from the members of the team, except for one large hump on his back. He told how, long ago, his own mother had thrown him off a cliff. Among all the fallen people, only he survived, while only bones remained of the steel fallen. He thought that Mose and the team came to this cave to throw someone else off the cliff, but they disproved his guess. He also said that the monitor lizards were his friends, who took care of him as if they were his own, and the fallen man taught them to live in peace with each other, for which the monitor lizards were ready to fulfill any of his desires. The fallen man told the team that he didn't want anyone else to be thrown into the pit and that he was going to fill it up. Guile told him that if he did so, all nearby populations would suffer. The fallen man said that there are much more corpses here than living people on the surface, because according to the decree of the local king, all people who have any defects or serious illnesses must be thrown into a pit, and if someone does not follow this decree he will kill them himself. He also said that he made parents throw their children off a cliff to make the village and its people look good. The team was shocked by what they heard, and they understood why the locals were scared that Mose and the team had taken on this quest. The fallen man told the team that if they tried to stop him, he would get very angry. Mose thought that despite the reward, he didn't like the idea of deciding who should live and who should be killed. He was very surprised that in such a quest he had to make such a difficult choice. Trying to find another way to solve the problem, Mose is going to make peace with the fallen man. Mose apologizes for the death of his friends and says that if a fallen man makes a collapse of the mine, then his mother may die. Then Mose promises the fallen man that if he leaves the mine with his friends and does not collapse it, then he will deal with the bad king, and no one else will throw people off the cliff. Fallen man was satisfied with such conditions. After that, Mose suggested that the team complete the quest by getting rid of the king. Sharon supported this idea, but Guile and Uncle doubted that it was possible. Mose then reminded them that the scheme has very advanced gameplay, which allows you to complete any quest in a large number of third-party ways. After some time, Mose with his team, Care and Kay, were already near the possessions of the local king. The locals hoped that these people had come here to punish the cruel ruler. Kiho demanded from the king that he come out before the people and answer for his atrocities. The king came out of his castle and did not understand what these people needed from him. Meanwhile, one of the residents begged to overthrow the king, because he personally threatened him for not going to throw his disabled daughter off the cliff. Care turned to the king to find out if this was true. The king said that for him the health of the inhabitants is above all, and that those who have various birth defects do not have the right to live in his kingdom. Sharon and Uncle were extremely outraged by such words. The king said that he did not intend to change such rules without the intervention of the emperor himself. Care said that he had come here not to punish the king, but to inform him that there was a task for the swordsman to take revenge on one gentleman from the castle. Such words greatly alarmed the king, and he immediately ordered his knights to arrest all the citizens present. Care was disappointed with the king's actions, and he told the king that Care faithfully serves the order of 14 knights, and that the actions of the king are contrary to all laws of the continent. Care added that people like the king are nothing but parasites on the continent who don't understand who the real scum of society really is. The king was extremely offended by this statement, showing all his dissatisfaction with Care's actions. Care began to get very annoyed with the behavior of the king, but despite all his displeasure with the king, he was not going to interfere in someone else's task. In a moment, Kiho killed the king, thereby ending his reign and causing unprecedented delight among the inhabitants. After that, the quest was completed, and Mose and his team received a reward. Sharon gave Mose a note from the fallen man, suggesting that he left it to Mose. In the note, he reveals that he and the monitor lizards have left the mine, and that he is grateful to Mose for his help. He also asks Mose to come to the mine so that he can search one ship there. Meanwhile, Kiho turns to Mose, saying that she has come a long way to get here. Mose greets her with a smile, saying that he missed her. Later, Mose with his team and Kiho together celebrate their victory in one of the taverns. Sharon asks Kiho about who she is to him, to which she replies that she and Mose are colleagues, which greatly upsets him, as he hoped that he and Kiho were much more serious. After some time, Mose returns to the mine, where the fallen man asked him to come so he can search the ship. But when Mose arrived at the indicated place, he did not find any ship. But immediately, a huge frigate of the heavenly ruler appeared from the bottom of the mountain lake. After that, a message appeared in front of Mose about the possibility of turning the ship into a summoning core. Mose agreed without hesitation and turned the huge ship into a small core, in which the power, maximum speed, and maximum number of passengers of the ship were indicated. Before leaving the cave, Mose was stopped by Care, who was surprised that he began to get caught by the players so often. Mose had already thought that he would blame him for asking Kiho to kill the king. However, Care said that he was the same person as Mose, and that he himself did not like the way the king behaved. After that, he thanked Mose and left the cave. After another feast in Kiho's tavern, Mose discussed with Mose that she had made friends in the face of Mose's team. Later, Kiho told Mose that she likes the players because they don't have any prejudice towards NPCs and that they treat characters like her as human beings. During lunch at the tavern, Mose invites his crews to join him on the next quest, to which they all unanimously agree. After that, he goes to Kay to inform her that he will return to Asparagon, and that he is calling her with him, to which she happily agrees. After lunch, Mose with his crew and Kia set out for Asparagan on Mose's new frigate. Everyone is amazed that Mose now has such a ship. During the voyage, Mose introduces everyone to Elsha, the guardian spirit of this ship, who controls the ship on the orders of Mose. Elsha announced her imminent arrival in Asparagan, which surprised Mose very much, because they had recently left the port. Upon arrival at Asparagan, Mose was about to go to the Information Guild, but when they got there, one of the guild members informed him that all the guild branches on the continent were now officially closed. Sharon and Guile were bewildered by this news. Meanwhile, one of the local residents called everyone to come to the square. Once there, Mose observed a terrible picture. On the big screen there was an image with several corpses of players. Mose thought it was just someone's bad joke. Lydorn, Prince of Logis, appeared on the big screen. He began to claim that the scheme is under their control, that the players have invaded their territory, that no one is happy with their presence in this world, because they are deceiving and robbing the inhabitants of the scheme. After that, Lydorn showed everyone the players he was holding hostage, and he was going to kill them without the possibility of returning to his world. After these words, he declared war on all the players of the scheme. After that, Mose received a quest in which he must defeat Lydorn. The next day after Lydorn's announcement, the scheme forums were in a panic. Some of the players considered this to be another game event, but there were also such players who were very much frightened by such a frightening behavior of an ordinary NPC. However, there were also those among the players who expressed sympathy for Lydorn. After that, millions of players united in large teams to resist the actions of Lydorn and defeat him in this war. Meanwhile, Mose and Kia were discussing Kia's attitude to everything that happened over tea. Kia said that her whole life consists of wars, her war with fate, the war with the wolves for life, the war for survival in this world, the war for her honor. Kia spent her entire life trying to protect herself. Mose apologized for such an awkward question to Kay. Kia told Mose about the fact that one wizard said that the world of the scheme is extremely unstable, and portals between dimensions constantly appear and disappear in it, from which new races enter the scheme, among which was the race of elves, which somewhat surprised Mose. Kia said that initially many people did not perceive alien races, but later two civilizations began to live in peace and harmony. But despite this, beings whose blood belonged to different races were still treated with contempt. But now there are players in the world of the scheme, among which there are those who bring little difficulties, but it was the players who greatly developed all current civilizations, and many fell in love with the players. Later, Mose decided to ask Kay how she personally feels about the players. She reminded Mose that she used to talk about players, that she likes players for not being prejudiced against people like her. And among these players was Mose, from which he was very embarrassed. Mose thought that the likes of Lydorn had their own reasons for disliking the players and seeing them as the enemies of this world. And even if Lydorn had some personal grief that is connected with the players, he chose an extremely ineffective method of fighting, because both players and innocent NPCs can suffer from this. Meanwhile, on one of the battlefields, the players were defeated during the battle with Lydorn and his army, thinking that there was no way to defeat him. Mose knew that the situation was heating up, and that he must take some action to stop Lydorn. Mose approaches his team with an offer to join the fray and stop Lydorn. After some thought, the team members decide to join Mose if he agrees to lead their team. At first, Mose doubted that he could take on the responsibility of leading the teams and giving them instructions. However, after thinking that the situation is getting tense and that he needs to act, Mose decides to become the leader of the team during the battle. Everyone was satisfied with Mose's decision, and Kia also decides to help them in this battle. At this time, the fighters of Lydorn almost completely defeated one of the groups of fighters. One of the warriors communicates via a crystal ball with a fighter from another group of warriors, in which almost all the fighters died, to report his position. Then they offer to join forces in group on the banks of the river. At this time, the warriors of Lydorn were preparing to finish off the remaining soldiers, and then the players decided to get to the coast as quickly as possible, where another group of fighters was already waiting for them.